Yeah, it did come up now.
What's up, everybody? This is your host, Vocab Malone. I hope that I'm being heard nice, loud, and clear. You're going to be able to see me nice, loud, and clear as well in a second here when I switch over my camera. Right now, it's just dang small because that's what YouTube is doing to me. But I'm going to join you, and I'm very excited about today's show. We got Peter Pike. Peter Pike. Not everybody knows who he is, but you will find out soon enough who he is. He has written a lot of blogs that are very, very, very well done, I think, at Triablogue. And not just blogs about us or things we've done or me or anything like that, but as of late, I've been included. And so I want to commend his work, and I want to introduce him to you, and I want to look at some things directly related to apologetics and art and satire and things like that. Now, obviously, I'm sure everyone understands that part of this would be coming out of Islamicize Me, this discussion that we're having today on Backpack Radio Live with Vocab Malone. By the way, that's me, everybody, in case you don't know. However, the idea is not to focus or stay in the past per se, but the idea is to use those circumstances as a chance, as a jumping off point for a larger discussion that I think is important for Christians to have, a discussion that Christians actually even have had in the past, and something that I think needs to be talked about. And so I'm looking at all of this as really just a great opportunity. Maybe I think that's a great way to put it. A great opportunity to have these kinds of discussions. And so I'm excited. So that's exactly what we're going to do today is I bring on my main man. Hold on, let me do something right here. And whoop, there you go, Peter Pike. Welcome to Backpack Radio Live with Vocab Malone. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Yes, sir. Briefly, everybody probably is wondering who's the guy in the awesome bluish shirt with hair on his chin and under his nose but not on his head. Who is he?
Well, yeah, that's a loaded question if there ever was
you
one.
Like that? Do you like that intro I just gave you?
Yeah, that's a great intro. Yeah.
Put it on your bio, bro.
Yeah, so I've been writing with Triablogue about a decade. I think 2007 was when Steve Hayes, who kind of runs the place over there, invited me to join. And so been blogging off and on from there ever since on a wide range of topics. My main audience tends to be more for atheists. I do my apologetics against atheism primarily, but through the course of everything I do, I am a Reformed Calvinist, and so as such, we touch anything that addresses the gospel. So I've debated online various people from Roman Catholics, Mormons, not quite as many Muslims yet. I just haven't run into them through my own day-to-day interactions. But I've done a lot of mainly with atheists and a lot with presuppositional arguments. Some with evidentialism, things along that line. So I love philosophy, writing, all that kind of stuff in general. And so, yeah, it's just kind of a fun thing for me to get into that. Yeah.
Nice. Well, let me tell everybody right in the beginning of the show that, because I see we've got 35 people watching right now, that if you guys want me to freestyle, there's two ways to get me to do it. Because sometimes, people want me to freestyle at some point in the show.
Huh?
But they have to find a way to get me to do it. So it's an if-then scenario, right?
Gotcha.
Cause and effect. So here's how it works. If we get to 100 viewers at any point during the broadcast, at the end of the show, I'll freestyle. Drop a beat, rap. Or if we get $50 in the super chat. So it's a $50 freestyle.
Gotcha.
And Peter, if I do it, are you interested in joining?
Well, for somebody who has not done any rap, sure, why not?
All right, man.
A long time ago, I was in a punk band, so
nice.
So,
all right.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Let's just get right started here. Oh yeah, and Carm, thank you for bringing up. Carm says, "Do not forget to hit the like button." That's right, Carm. By the way, Carm, you know what? I see you on there. I'm gonna try to do something that I've never done before. Look at that! I just added you to the show. Carm says, "Don't forget the like button." I know you can't see it, Peter, but I just put her comment on there. Now the problem is, Carm, I don't know how to get rid of you. Oh, I just got rid of you. Well, that was awesome. Wow, this is cool. Okay. Okay, so let's actually get right into it and look at some of the blog articles, because we want to talk about Christian apologetics and the use of satire, art, and even polemics. So a broad-ranging discussion that is relevant if you're interested in apologetic methodology, if you're interested in cultural engagement, if you're interested in the arts, if you're interested in apologetics, if you're interested in different literary forms. I think all of this is relevant to today's discussion. So we want to have a broad, big discussion, because Christians have been discussing a lot of these issues for a long time, and I find some of the things that you've written very helpful on it, and I want to bring them to a broader audience. And so I'm going to bring up some articles. So the first one is, I think we'll go in order, because you wrote more than 3, but I think we'll look at 3 specific ones. Everybody, they're at Triablogue. So real quick, everybody, I'm going to show everybody the website that they're at here, and I encourage people to check it. While I'm bringing this up, Peter, can you briefly talk about what Triablogue is? I'm going to bring this up and show it to everybody on the screen here.
Sure. And I'll preface it by saying that Triablogue started well before I joined. Steve Hayes is the guy who kind of runs it. I don't remember the exact details of how it got started. I think he was in seminary or something like that, and a group of people with him thought his voice needed to be heard, so they kind of started the blog for him, and it kind of progressed from there. And what we kind of are now is it's a loose conglomeration of people. There's about 5 of us who post semi-regularly, and there's a whole bunch of other people who can post if they want. We largely agree on quite a bit of theology, but there's also a wide spectrum of beliefs as well. Most of us are Reformed, but that's not the case for everybody. A lot of it just deals with if we have something that is worthwhile to say, and if we can communicate it. Since Steve is kind of the head honcho there, he is the one who invites the various people to write if they want to. So if he finds something in what you say that he respects or he agrees with, and you can communicate clearly, he'll bring you on. That said, it's not really like where we have to run everything through him. We can write whatever we want. He gives us a wide latitude of freedom there. And so yeah, it's a bunch of different personalities loosely in agreement on a lot of major issues, with a lot of room for disagreement in a way that is pretty intellectual. So most of our disagreements are kind of more of the nerdy type of philosophical discussions, and we even disagree with each other sometimes. And you'll never know if you post something whether or not anybody else in Triablogue is going to agree with you or perhaps disagree with you on that topic. And it's basically just there's no real one person in charge of everything. Although, like I said, Steve is kind of the owner, and he posts the most frequently and all that, so his voice carries through the large majority of it.
You guys have really good stuff. I've been following you for a while, and even if I don't always agree, I actually appreciate the tone. It's like you guys are a good combination of intellectualism, practicality, almost like world wiseness, in the sense of maybe what I mean by common sense, or kind of like where Jesus says, wise as serpents, harmless as doves. I see that you guys try to have that. There's a little bit of scrappiness to it. You guys will go back and forth with people. You do have multiple contributors, so it's not just one voice, multiple topics. So I like a lot of the writing. It doesn't try to be highbrow, but yet it's intellectual. So kudos on Triablogue. It's something that I recommend everybody. I mean, check the archives alone are worth the price of admission. Now, with that, I got a major announcement. Lily R. just totally threw the gauntlet down just now in the super chat and just dropped almost everything except for 1 penny short of what we need in the super chat. I never thought I would see the day, but dang, Lily. She says, now we only need a penny for you to freestyle. LOL. God bless you, Vocab. So, Lily, you just killed it. Oh, someone just... Rocks B. Let's hear that freestyle. Okay, she made it happen in the super chat. Well, I'll do at least one. Now you guys might even make me have to do two. I don't know. We might even do it in the middle of the show because you guys so quickly hit the goal. But don't get me too off topic, guys. I promise you, freestyle now. The freestyle will happen in the show. It's going to happen. But I still want to get to 100 people, everybody. But let's go right here to Triablogue. You guys are amazing, by the way. And I'm gonna look at some of the things you wrote here. And after I read maybe these 3 paragraphs, you can comment, okay? Hey, you're smart, Peter. What's the quick way to zoom in when you're on a website? Is there a quick way?
It would depend on the browser you're using, I guess. Are you on a PC or Mac?
I figured it out, but I did it the dumb way. But whatever, here it is.
Control plus often works on PC.
There you go. Okay, so here we go. Let's take a look at this, everybody. To paraphrase Wood's argument, so here, everybody, Peter Pike is referring to something that David Wood said in a discussion on kind of defending, I guess, the merits of Islamicize Me. For those who don't know, Islamicize Me was an exercise in satirical, artistic, polemical apologetics using film. All right, so that's what it was, and the target of the polemics was Islam, specifically the prophethood of Muhammad. People said, "What's the point of Islamicize Me that you guys did? I've never seen anything like it. What's the point of it?" The point was Muhammad's a false prophet. That was the main point of it, and I believe we demonstrated that thoroughly. That was the main point of the series, and it's a specialized area of apologetics called polemics. Look that up. If you don't know what it means, no big deal. That's why we come together to learn, but I don't want to define it right now. But Polemics. So here, let me read this. To paraphrase Wood's argument regarding the verses, whatever the passages mean, they cannot be legitimately interpreted in such a manner that Jesus, Paul, Peter, or any of the other prophets and writers of Scripture would have violated the commandment. I believe this to be a solid response, and I do think that most of the writers of Scripture will run into problems if the passages are interpreted the way that some are using them in this discussion. So here's what that means, everybody. Real quick, I'm gonna read it. I'm just going to give you the background. Peter is writing about the Islamicize Me controversy, and there was some critics, as something like this was bound to get. Now, we didn't do it to get critics, and there was more than just one, you know what I'm saying? But in some of them, people said, hey, here's these passages in the Bible, and I believe sincerely, and we respect their opinions, you are violating these scriptural norms. Here's what you're supposed to do, and we don't think you're doing it with what you're doing with Islamicize Me. And so Peter's first paragraph is to that point. Now, I'm going to let him describe it. I'm just doing these next 2 paragraphs. Then I'm going to hand the microphone over to you, bro. When we look at Scripture, we have to look at the entirety of Scripture. The Bible uses sarcasm, mockery, and even outright insults against certain groups of people, but not all groups of people. Clearly, this calls for wisdom before being employed by us. And this is especially the case when we realize that we each have our own sin nature we must confront. In a way, this is where holy anger also comes into play, because we know that anger can be righteous and just. God does indeed display wrath after all. Yet we also know that it is incredibly easy for us to employ anger in a sinful manner, and much, much more difficult to be angry in love. In the same way, it is far easier to resort to evil insults than to righteous insults. And I'm skipping some lines here. I do not think that every Christian is mature enough to draw that line by any means, and that we must always weigh ourselves to ensure that we are acting out of righteous motives and not sinful pride. But the fact that it is dangerous ground does not mean that it is ground that should be avoided at all times. Nor does it mean that when a Christian does attempt a rebuking response along those similar standards that he is guilty of prima facie sin. Just because it is easy to fall in sin at one point does not mean that someone has fallen in sin at that point. Now, I hand the microphone over to Peter Pike, exegete your own work.
Yeah, well, I think, excuse me, one of the things that we run into a lot in Christianity is we have a lot of traditions that we kind of we have set up unconsciously that we follow. And they filter how we interact with other people, what we perceive as being a good thing, what we perceive as righteousness, and they come along in addition to what Scripture says. And I think that was the big thing that I saw here, is that there were certain passages of Scriptures interpreted in specific ways that were relying on a presupposed foundation that was not found from Scripture, but it was actually being derived from culture. And part of the way you can tell that is when you look at the various passages and you look at how the Bible as a whole functioned through 2,000 years, that if your interpretation is such that you would cause the people in the Scriptures who are doing what God is commanding them to do in some instances to be sinning by doing that, then your interpretation is flawed. So when I was looking at the scriptural passages that are being presented, I wanted to look at it from the standpoint of what does the whole Bible say. I think that is the key. We can't just take an isolated passage here and there and then derive a morality from that, especially if you're going to use that to condemn another brother in Christ of sin. So if you're going to say somebody is sinning by doing a specific behavior, then my attitude is you need to trace it back in the Bible to where it is actually shown to be a sinful behavior. And if your opponent is actually showing you where Christians and the prophets of the Old Testament are doing those things righteously, then there is at least a minimum aspect of that the behavior itself is not always wrong. Now, that doesn't mean that we can necessarily do it ourselves. And that's why I said it calls for judgment. It calls for discernment. We don't get to just run rampant because we can just decide, oh, this time it doesn't apply to me, or I am automatically going to just assume that my motives are 100% pure. We have to be looking at ourselves. We have to know that we are doing what we're doing out of love. That's the only way that we can actually know if we're even being righteous on the things that are not specifically black and white. When we get the guidelines that tell us, here's the general rule, but here are some exceptions to it, and we're trying to see, are we in a situation where we need to follow the guideline that's general, or is this one of the exceptions? Then we have to know what the Spirit wants. We have to be examining ourselves, because coming from the Calvinist perspective, it is so easy for us to even self-delude ourselves with our sin nature. We have the Spirit with us, obviously, but even then, it's constantly a war with the old man. And we have to be aware. We have to be in prayer. And so, yeah, I would say the main thing is it's not a carte blanche to do whatever you want. I'm not saying that by any means. But the same token, just because something feels like it might be wrong, and in fact is wrong in certain cases, doesn't mean that it's definitely wrong this time around. And you have to be able to discern that. You have to be able to understand what is going on, understand if it is one of the exceptions or if it is the rule that we're looking at.
That's good. I agree. And you're getting some comments, some compliments rather. Where'd it go? I want to read this. Where'd it go? Oh yeah, Julian West. Oh wait, hold on. I can bring up. What am I doing here? I can bring up these things now, can't I? Let me try to do this here, since this is so cool. Hold on, everybody. I want to do it like this because this makes it so much funner. Did I do it? Hold on, I can't tell if I did it. I didn't successfully do it. Hold on, I need to do this. I need to make this happen. Or maybe I did and I just didn't notice. Oh no, I didn't. Hold on. I like to bring the comments on here, so that's what's going on. All right, here we go. Drag it over. Yes. Okay. Julian West says that blog series is not only well written, well thought out on the topic, but it's a fine example on how to think and examine and analyze something biblically.
Yeah, that was my goal on it. Is one thing, the specific person, and I don't want to dwell on the specifics per se on this. because I like you want to look at it from a broad perspective instead. But in this case, I'll just say the specific person I was responding to is somebody that I respect a lot, and there's no animosity from what I was doing. It's just something we disagree on. And I wanted to convey that as well in the midst of this, is to go, this is a brother in Christ who I disagree with on this topic. And you guys are brothers in Christ as well. And so that was part of my motivation on there too, is to be like, look, the Bible, it shouldn't be used to divide us on these particular issues, in my view. Yes, disagreement is going to happen, but we can actually look at it rationally. We can look at it from a logical perspective. We can look at it and dig into it without causing unnecessary offense amongst everybody else. And so that was kind of my goal on it, is to take that attitude, to be like, okay, this is why I disagree, and there are some good reasons why I disagree. And I try to also go and address the best reasons that were being brought against you guys in your video, to try and look at the best representations on both sides. So that was my goal and my aim in that whole series I was writing.
It's excellent. And I counted a total, Peter, of 15 articles related to Islamicize Me, but broader issues that you guys brought up on Triablogue. How many of those do you know were yours?
Probably around 5 or so were mine.
Okay.
I didn't actually count how many there were total. I know Steve had a large number of articles he wrote as well, and I believe Patrick Chan had 2, if I recall, on there. And actually, one of them, David Wood accidentally credited me for writing on one of his tweets at one point. So it was one of those things. But yeah, Patrick did 2. I think I did 5, and Steve did the rest.
Okay, nice. And so I want everyone to take note. Now, I know we have a broad audience, so I know everybody is not, well, I know actually probably the majority of my audience is not Reformed per se, from what I can gather, but we believe in unity in the body and being able to talk and disagree in a godly, respectful way. The reason I bring that out is because I want everyone to take notice. This Islamicize Me debate of the merits of it and some of these related issues is not a Calvinist versus Arminian thing. I'm Reformed, Peter's Reformed, and some of our main critics, not only, but some of our main critics were also Reformed. There's other issues at play here. And you know what? Honestly, I think, again, I want to bring out, I think a lot of these issues have been being discussed by Christians off and on, really, for a long time. And so I want to actually give you guys some resources in a second here to begin to think more about some of these issues and to realize that there's a lot of issues at play here. So we're going to get back to the blog, but before we do the blog, everybody, you know what I need to do? I feel like I need to go ahead and do this. Now, a lot of you know what's about to happen here. And what's going to happen is I'm going to say, backpack! What are some great resources on today's topic about the nature of Christian apologetics, cultural engagement, and art, and things like that? All right, well, it's fun to me, regardless of what anyone else thinks. But look! The backpack has blessed us with a great many resources, everybody. Let me make sure you can get in here and see it. This is really happening live on camera as you watch. Oh! There's actually a lot in here today. I don't think we're going to be able to do all this. So let's go quick here, Peter. And you can add some improv that the backpack didn't bring up. Number 1, actually, is a little bit different. I wanted to bring one book like this to show that Islamicize Me is in a category of its own, but that doesn't mean that that's the first thing you show a Muslim friend. It doesn't mean you never show them where you don't bring up the points. But I understand that there's different times for different things. I think we all understand that. That's why there's different genres of movies, for example, in a way, right? But check this out. Here's a great book about how to have conversations, I think, with Muslims from a Reformed perspective. Muslim and Christians at the table and promoting biblical understanding among North American Muslims. Now, some people may say, well, I bet the authors of the book would have disagreed with Islamicize Me. I don't know if they would have, but they probably would have disagreed if if you said, yeah, I'm going to just only watch Islamicize Me with my friend instead of talking to them. However, that would be an interesting thing to do with a Muslim friend, is watch parts of Islamicize Me and look at the sources together with them. Do you guys see what I'm saying by that? Now, since we're on the topic, let me bring up this, Abraham Kuyper, Lectures on Calvinism. Now, before you guys get too scared, I'm specifically recommending a specific chapter especially, and it's actually called Calvinism and Art. Now, again, some of you say, man, this is too much of this type of stuff in this show. Well, this is a good discussion about Christian view and worldview issues related to art in general anyway. And Abraham Kuyper, whether you agree or disagree, is a powerful thinker on that topic. Similar, in a way, to a more modern person, Francis Schaeffer, The God Who Is There. He has a section on here on music and stuff. And I also want you to think about another book he has, How Then Should We Live? The Rise and Decline of Western Thought and Culture, because he goes through a lot of the history of art and different things like this, and then has ideas about what to do with the Christian worldview in these areas. It's very challenging, enlightening stuff that he has there, I believe. Then, hold on, I'm not done yet. This book is something I recommend too. I'm doing a lot today. Urban Apologetics by Christopher Brooks. Why? Because he talks about a specifically urban contextual apologetic, and some of the ways you approach things are different. And he specifically talks about having the soul of a poet as an urban apologist is necessary, because you're not just connecting sort of like IQ to IQ in these settings, and there's something about connecting in other ways in certain contextual apologetic settings, and I think Islamicize Me does that in a way. It's almost like forcing you to pay attention to what Muhammad said about these things. Now, it's not just with Islam. This is a broader discussion. We could do this with lots of issues, and I think the Bible itself does it. And let me recommend a book on that before the show closes. But actually, you know what? I have more books than I can get to today. I'm actually going to skip some because we'll be here all day. But let me recommend one more called The Christian Imagination. It's for every Christian reader and writer by Ryken. He's a great writer. Well, he's really the editor, Leland Ryken, and it says it's got reflections on Schaeffer, Tolkien in it, and it talks about the Christian imagination in regards to literature. And this is good too. Now, Peter, you actually do some writing, right? You actually do some Christian fiction, correct?
I wouldn't necessarily say it's Christian fiction, just fiction in general. But all of my writing is influenced by my worldview. So there is that too. And yeah. So, you know, my own take on whenever you're going to write anything is the very first thing you got to do. There's really two things, but it's kind of one thing, two sides of the same coin, is you have to know what your audience is and why you're writing, right? And those two go hand in hand, because if you don't know the one, you can't know the other, really. So you have to know what the purpose is. And this is true not just with writing, but you guys did a video series. It's art in general. The very first thing you have to isolate is what is your purpose, and then who is this for? And I think that's a thing that a lot of people have missed in your series, is they assume that the series is directed at them specifically, and they don't get it. And they're like, I don't understand. Why would you do this sort of thing? And or if they don't assume it's to them directly, they might assume, like you were saying earlier, where somebody might be like, well, am I supposed to show this to my Muslim friends? Again, that's a question of maybe yes, maybe no. The issue is, who is it actually designed for? What is the purpose of it? And then trying to go beyond that scope, that narrow scope, is just dangerous when you get to art. If you try to push something too far, it becomes tacky. Propaganda even at times. So, you know, if you're an artist, you have to be extremely focused on one really clear thing. You can have shades all around it, but if you're trying to do too much stuff at once, it's just going to fail. So that's my take, coming from the writing perspective. If I'm writing a novel, then I usually get one main theme. It's got my worldview influencing it, but even then my characters aren't necessarily going to agree with my worldview. I might be writing from a point of view that is contrary to my worldview to show the consequences of what comes out because of that.
Right. Hold on real quick. That's interesting, because I believe that that actually is literally what happens in Judges, especially. If you read Judges, everybody, the book of Judges, there's these refrains in there, such as, in those days there was no king, everybody did what was right in their own eyes. But Judges tells these horrible, awful stories about Israelite behavior, and a lot of times doesn't actually say, and that was really bad. It just lets it sit there. Now, if you understand the whole of Scripture and you understand all the commands that are being violated, then you'll understand, oh, this is against the Decalogue. This right here is against the Holiness Code, and you'll understand that. But if you just read Judges by itself, you're like, and that's why atheists love the book of Judges, because they're like, look what's in your Bible, how bad it is. You don't read those to your children on Sunday school, do you? You know, that kind of thing, because they're not understanding the full grand story. But Judges is clearly playing it out. Now, you give that example. I'm going to hand it back over to you, because, I'm trying to be like Jazz here, flowing off what you're saying. You actually give that example in one of your blogs about the story illustrating the rash vow. Can you break that down?
Yeah, so it's the story of Jephthah, who he was fighting, I believe it was the Amalekites or Amorites, one of those, and he made a vow where he said, God, if you give me victory, I will sacrifice the first thing that comes out of my house. And he won the battle, got home. I don't know what he was thinking. Like, to me, it's like a dumb thing from the start. Why would you be like, whatever's the first thing that comes out of my house, I'll sacrifice? Some people speculate maybe he had animals and they were frequently run out and he's just going to sacrifice a pet or whatever. But if you read it, it was his daughter who came out first. And then he killed his daughter. People have tried to soft pedal and say, maybe it was more like she was consecrated to the temple and just had to live away like a nun. No, it's very clear from the passage, from the context there. It was a death. She died. And Judges never condemned him for that. It never says what he did was wrong. And the point I made in bringing that up was the story being presented that way was effective. You didn't need to say this is wrong because you could see it was wrong. And that's the power of a story. And I show the distinction between what I call didactic, which is the teaching parts of Scripture, where this is what you should do here. This is the reason why you should do it. And there's a lot of that in there. The Gospels, or not the Gospels, the epistles, what they're trying to say there, of Paul. Romans is great at showing the didactic reasoning of Paul. But the vast majority of what we find in the Bible really is stories. Even when you look at Genesis and Exodus, Exodus begins the law, but the whole first half of it is the story of the Passover, of the slavery in Egypt and how they come out of that into the Promised Land. That's the whole thing. And we know from later passages that this is representing a type of what we go through spiritually. When we are spiritually dead, we are enslaved to sin, and we are then set free through Christ. This is a metaphor, and you're looking at it going, these events literally happened in history. I mean, that's one of the things we have to keep in mind. When I'm saying this is a story, I'm not saying it's fiction when it comes to the Bible. Right. It is, these events happened, and God orchestrated these things the way that he did so that they would represent things later on, so that we can make connections in our mind. And he could have easily done the didactic teaching and just said, this is the way things are, these are the reasons why. But one of the points I made is what works cross-culturally is not the didactic teachings that people present. I mean, you can make it work. You can dig in, have people think over stuff and understand these are the concepts, these are this is what flows from it, this is the logic and all that. That takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of effort to show people how to think correctly. But if you can show them a story that demonstrates all of that, they get it. This is why the Scriptures, even though they weren't written down for a while, they're passed orally. And even when they did have written Scriptures, most of the people weren't reading it. They would hear it being preached at the church. They didn't have their own copies of the Bibles. It's very rare in history that Christians have been able to just go straight to the Bible and have it in home and on the internet. We have such a wealth of biblical knowledge available to us, and we just ignore it. Whereas in the past, they didn't have that. They had the stories, and they could remember the story. When you're out in the field, you can remember, Jephthah made a rash vow and he killed his daughter. I need to not make rash vows, and if I do make a rash vow, I should be the one who is punished for it, so I should break the vow and take that consequence upon me. I shouldn't be killing an innocent person who had nothing to do with it.
Right.
Those things can go across, and you don't need to have the verbatim verses there.
Yeah, it's not actually spelled out A, B, C, D in the story of Judges, and actually in other places in the Bible. And this somewhat relates. It's one book that the backpack brought out at the end, but it was actually on the iPad. It's actually called Against the Gods. Against the Gods by an Old Testament scholar named John D. Curid. I want to do a whole show on this sometime. In fact, you know what, guys? I've interviewed Dr. Curid before, and you know what I'm going to do after this broadcast? Within the next week, someone remind me of this so I don't forget. I'm going to slightly edit that audio interview because it's a great audio. A lot of people haven't heard it. And I'm going to put this interview up on my YouTube channel sometime in the next 7 days. You guys want to hear this. The subtitle alone, The Polemical Theology of the Old Testament. And it shows how a lot of the narrative, even things you wouldn't expect in the Old Testament, are designed to actually not just show how great Yahweh is, but to attack the ancient Near Eastern cultural religious neighbors of the Israelites. You're shaking your head. I see you shaking your head.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's this is the nice thing about the Bible. I mentioned to you previously in a private conversation we had, I had a seminary professor in a class I was auditing who once gave the recommendation, when you read the Bible, read it like it's true, because it is.
Right.
And that's exactly how he phrased it. And that's the thing, when you get to this stuff is true, and it impacts at far more levels than we realize even initially. It's kind of like, again, coming from my background in writing, when I construct something that I work a great deal on to come up with, how am I going to phrase this sentence? How does the structure of the story work? Does this convey my plot and all that? Does the point come across? I understand the amount of work it takes to get this type of stuff that just, you're looking at it and you read Exodus and you hear what or you read what Moses says, and a lot of it just you miss how intricate it is. Like you were saying there, where it's not just Yahweh you're learning about the impotence of the foreign gods in that same time. And there's a lot of stuff that you gather from that. And again, to go back to my main point at the beginning there, my view of why story is so prevalent in Scripture is because story is cross-cultural. You don't need to teach somebody in as much detail to grasp a story, because the story is universal. It's based off of our experiences that every human being has, just by virtue of us being created in the image of God. We have certain things that overlap. If you look at the story of the Tower of Babel, you can know that the mindset, even between just an Eastern mindset and a Western mindset, people think differently in the East than they do in the West. My dad is a missionary in Ukraine, and the Ukrainian mindset is completely different than the Western mindset of the U.S. And the priorities that they have are different than ours. Right. But you can still teach the Bible to them, because the vast majority of it is still in that story format. And there's very few times that you run into a culture that would be so alien that it wouldn't understand the concepts of the story, even if they would not understand the rules that are in Deuteronomy. They might not understand what holiness really is, but they can understand what it means for this country to be living differently than the neighbors. That part can be grasped, even if they don't understand what holiness directly is. Things along those lines. I think that's why the Bible works across the years and across the cultures. It's worldwide, and it's always relevant.
And notice, Jesus has a chance to teach, and what's he doing? He's not out there just philosophizing like Socrates or something like that. Now, it could be argued that he uses what's called the Socratic method as far as asking questions, but he's not just giving syllogisms or something like that. Half the time, Jesus is telling stories to people. It's almost like even when he's not telling stories, he's telling stories. What you just said reminds me of actually yet another book. Check this out. This book's called The Universe Next Door. The Universe Next Door by James W. Sire. This is a great book on apologetics and worldview as a concept. But what I love that he does in here, and he goes through some of those Eastern worldviews as well as the different modernist ones. I like how he actually it's considered a worldview catalog. This book. What I like about The Universe Next Door is he actually incorporates art into the apologetic analysis, because he has different poems and different things he used that make it more of an existential reading experience than merely just a textbook-like reading experience. So I recommend that as well. And by the way, I see someone in there said, "Hey, Vocab, adjust your mic. Your guest is a little louder than you." Now, I forget who it was. I lost track of your comment. I'm sorry. But whoever said that, I appreciate that. Those are the kind of constructive criticisms I'll look at and read. We have people on here sometimes before. Oh, there it is. It's you, Boycott Halal USA. Thank you. I appreciate that. I've had people on here before who they'll come on and they'll just kind of like complain the whole time only, about, Vocab, your music and this and that. But when people are like, give constructive criticism that'll make it better, it's something that I can fix right there, I actually really appreciate that. So will you give me feedback, guys, now? Because it's a little hard sometimes for me to tell. Will you guys give me feedback now if it's better? Let me know if the mics are more closely aligned now. Let me know, please, okay? Now, with that, we're talking about story. Oh, Cosmarine is saying, anybody know what syllogisms mean? Can somebody grab a good definition of syllogism is and throw that in the comment section, please? Could someone do that? Whoa! All of a sudden, I'm getting all kinds of. You guys, I can't even keep up with all these. I can't even keep up with all these. Wow, we got an active comment section here. But again, I appreciate you guys there holding it down. Let's go back here. I'm going to share my screen because there's a section here where I think you directly talk about what we're discussing right now. It's in your post from June 15th. It's towards the end of your blogs. And Peter, it's simply titled Wrapping Up a Few Things. Now, I hope everybody sees by the way we're trying to approach this. Yeah, we're having fun and all that. But this show is not some attack or just a, quote, defense of us. What are we trying to do in this show? We are trying to actually stimulate you guys to thinking in these ways. That's actually what's going on here. We're trying to challenge you to think about, because we don't want to just do it and say, well, it works or we like doing it. We actually do want to think about these things, okay? Now, Christians of good nature can come to different conclusions in the sense of like how they want to utilize satire we're talking about, and art and polemics and the ways they might do cultural engagement. We understand that and respect that, but we don't want to just do it willy-nilly where we're not thinking about it at all. So we want to show there's thinking that goes into this. We think it's important to think about. We think it's important to talk about, and we want to stimulate your thinking on these issues. It'll be helpful as you try to apply the scriptures and a biblical worldview to questions that we all, in a way, are interacting with almost every day. I mean, if you're on the internet, in a way, you're coming across all kinds of forms of art nonstop. And so I just want everyone to kind of go along with us and say, okay, let me think about this. And that's why we offer books to challenge you even further, because Christians have talked about this for a while and they've come to some different issues, and so we're just helping them out. So let's look again here. Let me share my screen, and I want to show everybody some of the article, and I'm going to zoom in so it's a little easier for you guys to read here. And let me read this. All right, here we go. Okay, let me read this. Okay. Peter says, you know what other story I think doesn't go far enough? The Book of Esther. It doesn't even mention God anywhere in the text. Imagine how much better Esther would have been if just once the author had said that Yahweh was behind the events, protecting his people. Perhaps God should have talked to me before he inspired that one. I hope everyone picks up the sarcasm there. This issue bugs me a great deal in part because I love to write my own stories. And because of that, I've had to deal with many of these topics. If you're representing a real story, how realistic do you make it? When an atheist gets out of bed in the middle of the night to go use the bathroom, or more likely to go get online to rant at Christians, just kidding. If he trips over his cat and smacks his face against the coffee table, he's not going to say, drat, that wasn't very fun. But by the same token, do you really want to write down what he would have screamed out? When you are writing a story, you have to take into account the purpose of the story. Your story cannot be everything for everyone. It's literally impossible. So you have to focus, pick your target audience, and go for it. Part of why so much horrible fiction is out there is because some writers try to be everything to everyone at the same time, and the story suffers because of it. But then you have Christians who insert themselves into the fictional works of other Christians. And it's amazing how many people are making the mistake with the video series from Wood, and that they don't even realize that there are fictional characters involved. The videos are not about David, John, and Vocab. They are about Dennis, Jamal, and Giovanni, 3 fictional characters played by David, John, and Vocab. That's true. Thank you. And there's your typo you mentioned. No big deal. Back to my point. There are Christians who do not understand how stories work, but who demand that every story be turned into some kind of specific gospel message that they would approve of. These people are the reason so few Christian productions make it through Hollywood. That might be one reason, of course. I'm sure there's others. The story itself is sacrificed for the sake of the propaganda. You don't like it when non-Christians do it. Why do you think they'd watch it when you do it? On the other hand, when you do a well-written story, you can get people to think about it and discuss those Christian themes because the message is attached to something that works as a story first. Now, I'm going to stop right there and let you comment on there, because this is something we were discussing earlier and I thought was helpful. So let me share, and I'll let them see your face again. But can you comment on that, Peter?
Certainly. Yeah, that's one of the things that when I first started writing and running into Christians who were saying, you should do this, you should do that, they missed the important part of the work of art, which is that the work of art has to be art first. If it's not artistic, then don't do art. You don't have to make a story. You don't have to make a fictional video. You have the ability to do a straight-up didactic teaching in your own video if you want. But if you are going to present a story, then you are putting yourself in that medium. You're saying, I am going to make a story. The story has to be there first, or no one is going to want to listen to it. And in fact, it would have the opposite effect. It's going to turn people off if you're being too heavy-handed with it.
And also, Peter, I'm not saying you're sinning by making bad art, okay? But maybe we could say something like, we more fully recognize or express the imago Dei by realizing the creative potential that God has put inside us. We more maybe perhaps image him further. Now, see, I don't want to leave the character issue behind or anything like that, but I'm really trying to help people see that God. Why does the Bible even mention the beginning of the arts? Do you guys remember that? I think it's Tubal Cain. It mentions the beginning of music and the arts and metallurgy and things like that. Why does the Bible even do that? And why does the Bible employ different literary genres? Westerners, I think, focus on Paul, and it makes sense to focus on Paul's letters because they're exegeting the events of the gospel. So don't get me wrong on that. And that's the focus is who Jesus was. So we need to do that. But maybe sometimes there's a fault there because of the way it's constructed is almost more culturally comfortable for us than some of the things that we see in the Old Testament scriptures. And that's why sometimes you get bad apologetics trying to defend the Old Testament scriptures, when maybe part of this would be if we read the Bible literarily, we would see really the point of these, such as the story about the rash vow. I mean, I'm just putting some things out there, but I think you're bringing up great issues, and I see some great people making some really great comment section. Guys, I love this because a lot of times you go on live chats and people are saying the dumbest things, and you go on YouTube comments videos and they're just really brain dead. But when I look at these live chat that I see, you guys are mentioning authors and books and bringing up great personal little anecdotes about yourself. Your comments are funny. I just really appreciate the spirit of this. So keep that up, because that's what we encourage, a community that's thinking about these things. So Peter, I hand it back over to you.
Yeah, I was just going to say, there's one thing in particular that I wanted to mention specific to your video series, and in reference to how if you put in the stuff that the Christians are demanding, the whole thing suffers. And I think specifically of the adoption video that you guys did. And one of the critiques was that this was a really good video, one of the few that people were saying, I can recommend that no matter what, but I wish it had gone further. And the I wish it had gone further part is the part that I have trouble with, because the series, this is in the middle of a 30 video series. The plot of your series starts in episode 1, it ends in episode 30, and there's an arc through it. And if you had addressed all of the things that made Christianity better than Islam in the adoption video, then the question would immediately be, why would your character not convert at that point? Why would he still continue down the path? And when the entire story is to get to the end where you guys are trying to kill Robert Spencer. If you are going up
sorry,
stuff that makes it impossible to get to that end, you're ruining the story. You're getting to where you're undermining your own method. And I would even say if you presented something saying this is why Christianity is better at that point in the series, then you would have had to come up with some kind of justification for Giovanni to still continue in the next videos. And whatever that justification is would have to be sufficient to propel the character down that path, which to me would be that it could only be done if you are providing an apologetic for the Muslim to refute the Christian view at that point. Otherwise, you have an inconsistent character, and at this point, the entire power of that character is lost because he's not acting rationally. He's just randomly going around doing whatever. There's no connection to the story. There's no motivation. There's nothing keeping that grounded to reality. And even though the reality is the reality of a fictional universe, you have the rules that you have to set up when you're creating fiction, and good fiction obeys the rules of the universe they create. You make your universe, and you follow the rules you put in place. And it can be ridiculous rules, but if you have put them in place, then it works. You can think of any fantasy story that's got magic in it. And magic is inherently ridiculous. It doesn't work in the real world.
Wait a minute. Hold on. Are you saying something
exactly
disparaging about this magic backpack?
Exactly. But here's the thing. When you have that establishes the rules of the universe you're in, then that's where it follows through. You get into some of those online with Star Wars, for example, where I had one of those critiques where it's like, the gravity doesn't work right when you're in space. You're dropping bombs. There's no gravity to pull the bomb down. What's going on with this? Those kind of discussions. Well, Star Wars has never had accurate physics.
Right, like there's, for example, the TIE fighters go in space, but you couldn't really do that.
Yeah, and that's where you be consistent with how you break the rules for the sake of your story. It's when you do an ad hoc, out of nowhere breaking of the rule, the story fails. And as soon as the story fails, you've lost any ability for the story to carry along your point. So whatever you're trying to teach behind the scenes, your worldview that you're wanting people to think about, so the stone in the shoe that makes them stop and go, I wonder, maybe there's more to this. Maybe God from Christianity is right. If you're attempting to toss that pebble into someone's shoe and you ruin it by making the story so horrible it turns them off, then you failed. Now, that said, the opposite extreme is very easy to go to as well, where you're just like, well, I don't care about actually having it present a message. I just want to entertain. And if all you're doing is entertainment for the sake of entertainment, I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with that. But I think it is better if you're including along entertaining for the sake of presenting a truth that people would normally overlook. For me, that's when I choose to write, I want to have something to say in addition to just entertaining, but I want it to be entertaining while I say it as well. It's one of those things where you literally have to say both sides are necessary. You can't sacrifice one for the sake of the other. If you do want to sacrifice one for the sake of the other, don't do this technique. Don't try to make videos that are impacting Islam if all you want to do is entertain, or if all you want to do is present the truth and debate Muslims, just present the truth and debate Muslims. You don't have to do this video series. But as soon as
that's real quick. I'll bookmark where you are. Just so everyone knows, we never said, "Hey, all the cool apologists, you need to make videos like Islamicize Me." If you are making videos like Islamicize Me, you guys are doing it wrong. We never said or would say anything like that. In fact, if you look at our own work, There's serious debates, there's books, there's articles, there's conversations, there's one-on-ones. You know, there's different things because times and seasons, places and people, you know, all these kinds of things. Colossians 4, 5, 6, actually, in my mind, you know, so you ought to know how to answer each one, I think is relevant to that. So go ahead, though. I just want to bring that out to people. We never recommend one size fits all. That's why we have snapbacks on.
There you go. Yeah, and to wrap that whole concept up, going back to Esther as a great example, where God's not even mentioned in the book. He's obviously working behind the scenes, but it's not drawn out. If this was the entire Bible, then the Bible would be very, very poor. You know, we wouldn't have a lot of stuff to sink our teeth into. We wouldn't know much about him. We wouldn't even know from Esther alone that he exists. You know, we would assume it. A presuppositionalist could still make an argument based on the consistency of logic and things like that. But the book being in the Bible still works. It's still important because it has the rest of the Bible with it. It's not in isolation. And that's another thing that I think people were missing with this video series. David Wood has produced hundreds of videos. He's gone through, presented the gospel to Muslims in those videos. It's there. I've seen them. I've watched them. This is like taking the book of Esther and saying the Bible is a failure because Esther doesn't address everything that the book of Romans does. It's not intended to. It's intended to focus on how God was protecting his people when they were really conquered by, I believe it was Persia in that. King Xerxes, I believe, is the one. The same one from 300, if you didn't know that. So from the movie 300, to be clear on that. So the purpose of the Bible, the individual books in the Bible, can't be separated from the Bible as a whole. And I think that ultimately it's a disservice to you guys if they take this video series and pretend that you haven't done anything else at all and that everything must be fit into that video series. Right. I just don't think that was fair to you that they did that.
No, I appreciate that because it's like there's like a body of work, you know? It's just there's more going on, you know? But yeah, it's like, I don't know, some people forgot that or something. You know, some people seem to be like already demanding the freestyle now instead of the very end. So Peter, will you please pardon me. Here's what we're going to do. First of all, I'm going to have to look at the chat, everybody, because I'm going to kind of need to see if the sound levels are right. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a little beat. And you guys kind of tell me how the sound levels are, okay? And we'll do a little freestyle. And I'll even tell you guys what. If you guys can put some things you want me to freestyle about and I see it in time in the live chat, I'll try to incorporate it into the freestyle. But this freestyle comes courtesy of Lily R. And, oh no, I forgot. Who was the other person that gave in the live chat? The super chat. I'll remember. Tell me who it was and I'll give you a shout out again. I know who it was. I just forgot who it was. I'm so sorry. But also, forgive me. In the beginning, I saw a lot of you said hi to me, and are still saying hi, and I appreciate that. I've actually seen most of those. I just can't respond to them all or anything like that. But I appreciate you guys, you know, coming in, saying hi, and all that. And I see some of you have also commented on my Batman shirt, and I appreciate all that. So just so you know, I see a lot of things. I just can't respond to all those. I think it was Roxby. Yeah, Roxby. I think it was you. Shout out to you, Roxby. All right, so you guys, again, I'm going to start. You guys are, these comments. I'm sorry, I'm just laughing at the comments. I'm going to start, and you guys tell me again how good the sound is or isn't, okay? So let's do this. Here it goes. Let me bring up the volume. How's the beat sound, everybody? How's my mic sound, everybody? Alright, yeah. Vocab Malone, it's time to rap, man. I'm wearing the shirt representing Batman. Batman on a collar, somebody gave $50, so now I grab the microphone and I holler. Talking with a scholar, his name is Peter Pike. I got a white snowball mic. Alright, I'm spitting to the right and the left. It's fresh and it's hot to death, yes. So the mic is sounding good, check. Ha! who is from the hood up in here. It's okay if it's the burbs, Vocab Malone, and I spit those verbs, I spit those nouns, try to make it profound, bring in the piano jazzy sound. It's up tempo now, it's down tempo now, here we go again, don't be go simple now, like that dude in the chat talking about my snapback. What's wrong with a snapback when it's all black and yellow, fellow? This is C3PO. In case you didn't know, it's time to flow. Yo, VOC, A to the B. Hello, how you doing? One, two to three. And listen, everybody, buy me something for my birthday. Maybe even tune in this Thursday. It's a live Q&A. We're gonna make it fresh. It's gonna be nice. It's gonna be the best show on YouTube, better than David Wood, cause I am really good, he is mediocre, David's a joker, and I'm Batman. I'm coming with the rap band across the land. Yes, y'all, this beat is fat, supersize. We're talking about the series called Islamicize. It's Satire, so if you're tired, sit down and well, I fired myself because I just messed up. I gotta stop right now so I can step up. What? Hey, Peter, you got something? You want to spit some?
Man, I got nothing live, that's for sure. Yeah.
Let's see how long is left in the... We're talking... Here, I got some more. We got like 2 minutes left on the freestyle. Okay, here we go. 3, 2, 1, ha! Alright, I got something else, everybody. Check it out. A funny series on apologetics, it's a miracle. Islamicize Me was satirical. Plus sarcasm, peep it out now. We bashed him. Muhammad, not a prophet. If you say he was, you just need to stop it. Let's change the topic. Look at my optics. These glasses aren't real, but here I go again. Y'all know the deal. Say Christians need to chill with all the criticism spitting. Yes, y'all, freestyle, not a written. We keep it ill with the ill dialogue. Everybody go to the website, try a blog. It's a nice blog with the writing by Peter. He's got the dope stuff, it'll make you a believer. Coming through receiver. Yes, Eureka, he found it, the skills, and yes, he drowned it. He's typing, he's writing, but he's not freestyling. Alright, well, whatever.
I got like one rhyme.
You got one rhyme?
My one rhyme is a crime. So that's
it?
That's about it.
His one rhyme is a crime.
Flour thicken, but this will make me sicken. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got no rhythm.
40 seconds.
I play guitar, not drums.
You guys like this beat? I like this beat. So listen, you guys, I never claimed to be the dopest MC. Kind of got an old school style, but I have fun doing it. I like to see the claps. We got claps going on in the super chat. That's nice. Appreciate that, y'all. Someone's going to come on here and say, man, that's so worldly, man. Don't be... Oh, now I see some comments. Rap about the Trinity. I tell you what. Next time. Remind me to do that next time. All right, Rosie? And we'll try to get it next time. But since I brought it up, everybody, do not forget, we got 10 minutes left in the show, first of all. But, oh, by the way, while I was freestyling, you're supposed to be finding out the final things you wanted to say from your blogs and stuff. So hopefully you were thinking the whole time. But this Thursday, we are coming live again on Backpack Radio. And let me make sure, is he still in here? Because actually... the guest is, I saw him in here earlier. Let me ask him before I totally announce it. I'll just announce it and hopefully he is. But my main man, Jordan Ortiz, who has a great YouTube channel. I just hit you up, Jordan. They're Servant of Christ Ministries. He's got a great YouTube channel, does a lot of urban apologetics. Okay, he's good. All right, let me briefly tell you about who we're going to have this Thursday on Backpack Radio Live. He's an ex-Black Hebrew Israelite. He's from Atlanta, real cool dude, real chill dude, real respectful dude. He's not like me and Peter. He's got good manners. But seriously, he's an awesome brother, man. I love his videos. I love his channel. I love his style. I love his personality. And he's got a powerful story. He's an ex-Hebrew Israelite who now is a wonderful Christian apologist. No joke, no joke. Now, we're going to talk to him a little bit. But a lot of what we're going to do, everybody, is take your questions live. Because now that I've dropped some stuff about the Black Hebrew Israelites, I see a lot of people getting interested in that. I know that people's primary interest initially was Islam, and we're not going to leave that. In fact, today we're touching on it in a way. See, talking about Islamicize Me, stuff like that. But we're going to have other types of discussions, including today's, which touches on others as well. But you don't want to miss this Thursday, East Coast time, 11:30. It's going to be me and Jordan, Servant of Christ Ministries. Again, subscribe to his channel. And we're going to talk to him and take questions because he's an ex-Black Hebrew Israelite. It's going to be great. So, anyways, I'm very excited about that. Now, let's get some final thoughts from you. I don't know if you've been able to look at the live chat at all, anything you want to interact with. But I'd love to hear, Peter, maybe some loose ends, like when I interrupted you, things you need to bring back around. Some final big points. Peter.
Yeah, I pretty much got most of what I really wanted to deal with in the whole scenario, looking at the nature and the role of story, the point of it, why God used it throughout the Bible, the various ways that he has interacted with his people, things like that. Those were the important points to me. In terms of the foundation, what am I looking for? The structure, I guess, of what you guys were doing. When the only other issue that I would want to touch on at all is just, again, going back to the aspect of the people who were saying that what you were doing was a sin.
Right, yeah.
I was looking, if I am going to accuse somebody of sinning, then I take upon myself a burden of proof in that to show how they are actually sinning. And it goes back to one of my original points at the very beginning. A lot of this is where several of the people were assuming their view of what makes them comfortable and what makes them uncomfortable is driving what they view as moral or immoral, as opposed to actually being able to look at Scripture and say this is a specific statement that says if you do this, that is a sin. And that's the part that I felt was the greatest letdown, is the people who were most loudly saying that what you guys were doing was sin were the people that they didn't bother digging into that and showing why it was a sin. And so one good example that I had of it was the fact that when most of us are watching a movie, and we can even take it into the G-rated version of events, because we have G-rated movies where a bad guy will kill somebody. There's no blood or gore or anything, but clearly murder is a sin. And yeah, most of the time nobody bats an eye. Nobody says it is immoral for you to be in a production of something that is displaying a sin. Murder is a sin. So if you act out sin, then it seems that if they're going to be consistent throughout, then they should condemn that. They should condemn the people in an old TV Western when the bad guy shoots up the saloon and he kills one of the people and then the sheriff has to go after him. That should be condemned on equally strenuous grounds, saying that if you're depicting a sin, and if depicting a sin is itself wrong, then it needs to be consistently applied. And that was not done. It's like, in this case, people were picking and choosing which events that they decided depicting that sin is bad, depicting that sin is not. And one of my arguments had been that if you're going to make a moral judgment on it, we tend to go towards saying that if you are sinning while depicting the sin, then you're sinning because you are literally sinning while doing it. So if you literally killed somebody on stage, that would be a sin. But
right.
If you're pretending to, nobody really considers that a sin. Or at least I've never heard anybody argue that that is a sin to display that. But the most controversial one of the videos was probably the breastfeeding video. And literally, the actions that you guys were doing were sitting in front of a fully clothed woman, and you put cream on your lips. That's not a sinful action. Now, is it a sin that you're depicting? Very possibly. I don't know for sure on there because one of the points I made is the Bible doesn't actually say thou shalt not breastfeed, right? And in fact, one of the things that was ironic about this is I can actually come up with a version of events that I think most people would find moral, Suppose that somebody is dying, they're starving to death, they're dehydrated in the middle of the desert, and a woman comes up and she's lactating, and she's like, "You're going to die, and this is the only thing I have. Drink this." I don't think most people would say that that is a sin. So the question becomes, is it always a sin? And by the way, in case you're wondering, what I just gave you there is the ending of The Grapes of Wrath. Okay. I don't know if you read by John Steinbeck. That's
really?
the ending of the book. So it's like it's used in art. If you did a performance of that, and again, I don't want to be dogmatic on this point, because this one I can clearly understand why people were troubled by it. Because it's a personal thing where people might get impure thoughts from that, and that could be causing a sinful reaction in them, and so we got to be sensitive to that. So I don't want to be too flippant or sarcastic on it, but the reality remains: if it's not always condemned, then what reason is it condemned? And that's what you have to have a consistent moral basis on. You have to have a foundation of saying, if we're going to condemn this behavior for this reason, then when that same behavior happens for the same reason, or a different behavior that's similar, then are we going to consistently condemn both sides? And I just didn't see that consistency between the things. So I'll leave it with that in terms of people who were condemning as a sin what you guys were doing. I never saw the evidence. I never saw them present a genuine case. And the types of behavior that they would say, we were supposed to be gentle, and Jesus was described as gentle, overlooked the fact that Jesus also took a whip to the people in the temple and drove out the money changers. Was he being gentle when he did that? Or is gentleness something that has specific applications? These are not something that you can just flippantly say, I have the answers to, without thinking about it. And I think ultimately that's my point on it, is even on stuff that I recognize that there's room for debate, and I understand why people would disagree, I still want people to think on it, to go, do I have a justification for saying somebody has committed a sin? Or is this just, I don't feel comfortable with this and I'm lashing out? So it's got to go both ways. I'll leave it at that from my side of stuff.
Well, yeah. So in that, I mean, again, what is our, so with the breastfeeding one, the point was that Muhammad was not moral, wasn't spiritual by any biblical understanding, and that his prophethood status should at the very least be called into question. And we're giving a live illustration of that. But at no time were any of those acts actually committed by the actors. Everybody was fully clothed. In fact, the female who I've interviewed on here before, she has a background in sketch comedy, Noelle. Some of you guys remember her. She actually had more clothes on than most Western women wear, because she had a full burqa on in the actual scene. So it's imitating something to say, like, yo, here's what Muhammad is telling grown adults to do. Here's what it would look like. It's like what's called a reductio ad absurdum. It's drawing the point out logically to its absurd conclusion of what life would be like if you actually did what Muhammad said to do, which is ridiculous if you think about it. Now, let me end, Peter, with reading part of your blog, because I think you wrote some good stuff here. And again, I recommend everyone go to Triablogue. This is from the section that says wrapping up a few things. And I like these last couple paragraphs. People are not all the same. Amen. And when you evangelize, you have to know which method will work with each person. That kind of contextualization, I think makes sense. It's like Colossians 4, 5, 6, for example, I think speaks on it. How do you do that? By listening to the Spirit, ultimately. There's a time to destroy and a time to build. That's Ecclesiastes, everybody. And if you're in a genuine relational ministry with your Muslim friends, now you could put the word Muslim, you could make it Jehovah's Witness, Mormon, atheist. You guys see, this is just the context of the conversation, but we're trying to make it a bigger, broader conversation. Just understand that's the example at hand because of the context of this blog. Muslim friends and spending time with God in prayer, in His Word, and in His church. He will lead you to when you destroy the false worldview of your friend and when you build up the truth of Christ. So you do not need David Wood videos to do everything for you, to evangelize on your behalf. No, you need to evangelize, and Wood is just providing a tool that fits the scenario that is needed when you run into the hardened Muslims who need their worldview knocked down a peg or two. If you don't need those videos when you're witnessing to someone, guess what? You don't need to send them to anyone. Use the tools you need at the time you need them, and only a fool would get upset that a circular saw isn't a cement mixer. Maybe someone should have told Paul to write a metaphor like that, but I guess he wouldn't have had power tools. Maybe he could have used, I don't know, body parts or something. All right, that's a final thing. I'll let you exegete, my friend Peter Pike, and then anything you want to say, and then once you're done, we're going to stare for about 20 seconds at the screen. That's how we end. And then that'll be the end of today's Backpack Radio Live as we discussed polemics, satire, comedy, and a bunch of other stuff like art in relationship to Christian apologetics. Go ahead, Peter.
That is pretty much where I stand on it. I think that, especially coming from an apologetics blog, we've had over the years a lot of commenters who would say, hey, can you answer this? Can you answer that? And they bring up stuff. And a lot of that is where, I'm sitting here going, why aren't you doing this? You have the ability to do it. The people who are asking, not you personally, obviously. But if you're asking, why don't you address this? You can do it. We just want to provide tools. But I think that a lot of times people are using your guys' videos, my blog posts, things like that, in lieu of actually evangelizing their neighbor. They're just like, oh, read this, and they just shove. It's kind of like the reason I don't like tracts in general. There's no relationship. It's just you shove material in somebody's hand, and you're basically saying, hey, throw this away from me, right? Now, God uses that, so I'm not condemning it across the board or anything, but if we want to actually reach somebody with Christ, you have to start with that relationship. You have to be with them. You have to be on the ground beside them in their lives in order to really like earn the right for them to listen to you. You don't just go up and start shouting at somebody and expect them to listen. You gain that by that relationship. And then when you know them, you're able to strategically get the tools that you have and use them in a way that will actually impact for the kingdom far better than if you just assume this video is going to do it for me and just shove them a link. So that's kind of the background to that.
Yeah, that's good. And, I like how you bring up the relational aspect. And, there's a lot more we could say about this. And I want to leave just with helping everybody see that it's bigger about this side versus that side at the moment. In 100 years, we will probably all be dead, but these discussions, God willing, if everything's still going on, will still be happening. And so I want us to try to positively contribute to these discussions now while we're alive so we can better use our time and be wise as we interact with the culture. Because Christians have had disagreements and discussions about this, and I think there's been a lot of great thoughts on it. That's why I brought up some books. And, I quoted from Kuyper and Schaeffer, for example, or I recommended those. But both those men are dead. So some of these, Kuyper are a little bit more so dead than Schaeffer, but, they're dead. And so we're bringing up Christians from other times and other contexts and other cultures. And so we're trying to keep that going and have a broader discussion, not just a tit for tat with anything about specific videos, but a broader thing. And ultimately, we do want to please the Lord and all that. And so we're trying to do that as we go along. And we understand there might be some disagreements. We understand that. But I think today was a really helpful discussion. And I hope it was food for thought for people. And I hope that people see, even if we do have some different views about some of this, or maybe a little thing here, a little thing there, that it's important for us to talk about it and think about it, and we can do this in a godly way. Now with that, I again remind everybody this Thursday, 11:30, we're going to have my main man, Servant of Christ Ministries. Again, subscribe to his YouTube channel. His name is Jordan down there in ATL. Ex-Black Hebrews like, come on. And we're going to answer your questions live. That's going to be the gist of that show, is mainly answering live questions. I'm sorry I really couldn't get to a lot of questions. There's things like that today. We have great people in here. I see a lot of what you guys do. Especially thank you to Roxby and Lily R, who made the freestyle happen with the Super Chat. And lastly, everybody, do not forget to subscribe on iTunes to the podcast. I clean up the audio, so the audio on the podcast always sounds a little bit better. I tend to cut out a couple parts here. I don't heavily edit it, but it's a little more streamlined. And it's on iTunes. It's free. Just go to Backpack Radio with Vocab Malone. And also it's in the Google Play Store. It's also on Stitcher as well and some other things I can't remember. But it's you can find the audio, because some people can't always do the videos, and a lot of people like to listen to these twice. And it's really cool to listen to the audio afterwards. You kind of catch things you didn't catch. And again, on the reading tip, check out Triablogue. Peter Pike's one of the contributors there, and he did a great day today. Hey, there's somebody in there, admins, you see him. His comment is blocked. There's some people dropping some crazy words. Don't just delete their message. Hey, Roxby, I see you deleted the message. I appreciate that. Block those people permanently. That kind of language will never be tolerated in here. So don't just block those. Don't just delete the message to those two people that just did that. Block them forever. Anyone that does that, don't just time them out. I see you time them out, I think. Don't just time them out. Block them. Sorry, Peter. There's people coming on and swearing and dropping racial slurs and different things. We'll never have that. That's a one-time offense. You do that once and you're gone forever. Okay, thank you guys. Okay, so with that, again, Peter, thank you. I appreciate your thoughtfulness on these matters, and I really enjoyed today, and I appreciate your time in the writing. And it'd be great to talk to you again, maybe when the next controversy flares up. And
I enjoyed it, so yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, were you ready to stare at the screen and tell everyone goodbye?
Sure. I got to do the beard rub.
Everyone stare at the screen at your houses, at your homes.